Episode 216, Climbing Your Personal Everest with Meg Tilton.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
Coach Meg Tilton shares the story of her 29:029 Endurance Challenge, where she climbed the elevation equivalent of Mount Everest in 36 hours. Through intense physical training and mental preparation, Meg discovered profound truths about resilience, the power of discomfort, and the importance of trusting herself and others. This transformative experience has shaped how she approaches personal goals, relationships, and her work as an emotions coach. Please enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast today. And I am joined by a repeat offender. Should I call you a repeat offender?
Sure. You can call me whatever.
One of my favorite repeats. I call her one of my favorites because this podcast would not exist without Meg. Meg is our podcast producer, along with being a coach here on the directory. So, hey, Meg, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you
Good.
for being here. Oh, I have a
Yeah.
cute little bird that just perched on my windowsill.
Oh,
Oh, that's
fun.
always a nice surprise for this
Yes.
time of year. Anyway,
Yes.
sorry, easily
That's
sidetracked.
okay.
I'm like, squirrel, squirrel.
That's okay.
So Meg, I am excited to have this conversation with Meg because she did something this year that was really cool. And I have talked with a couple of other coaches that have done this, but I always love to get to hear the stories and pick their brain. So I'm going to let Meg tell you what it is we're talking about today. But before we do that, Meg, can you give everybody here, in case they haven't heard you on the podcast before,
Mhm.
what you do, and just give us a quick rundown on who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an emotions coach for Christian women, and I just help them learn how to not control, but lead all of their emotions and parts internally so that they can have the best outcomes. So a lot of times people think that they are how they react is dictated by their circumstances. And it really is dictated by how you lead yourself internally. I believe heavily on emotions, how those emotions are treated by you and how they're validated by you and how they're given voice, but they're not in control of you. So it's by leading internally.
Was our last podcast episode we do together, was it on internal leadership? I feel
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and that has left a lasting impression on me. Like, that's a phrase that I've kind of keep tucked away in my brain when I notice myself kind of maybe not leading out the
Mm-hmm.
way that I feel like my soul wants to. I kind of pull that phrase out of my
That's
innards,
good.
out of
That's
my soul,
good.
to be like, hey, wait, internal, I'm going to lead internally here. So thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for giving me,
Yeah.
I think it always helps to have words for my
Yes.
brain to settle on, to help me move forward in a direction that I want to.
Yeah, for sure. Great. I'm glad.
Okay. So since I kind of teased that what are we talking about today?
Well, back in this last fall of 2024, I participated in an event called 29029, which I actually heard about for the first time from another coach named April Price. And she just had talked about it on her podcast. And I thought, wow, that sounds pretty amazing. And so I looked into it a little bit. I convinced one of my friends to sign up for it with me. And then we signed up and went for it. And it pretty much consumed all of 2024 for me,
I was going to say,
preparing
it's
for
not
it.
something you
Yeah.
just go for. Like, it takes a lot of training.
Yes. I mean, it depends on your fitness level,
Mhm.
because what essentially you're doing is you are climbing the elevation of Mount Everest in 36 hours. So you don't go to Everest. Doesn't take place on Mount Everest. So there's not that risk of, dying at the top and having your body be on the side,
Left
preserved there
there,
forever.
left there with every.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, total sidetrack. But I have to I have to share this with people because I think it is well, there's a meme that I came across one time that said, last I checked, the mountains of Everest were littered with people with grand ideas. So maybe let's just
Right.
take it down a notch. I
That's
actually put that
awesome.
on my vision board for this year.
That is awesome. That is
Anyway,
awesome.
yep, it's a good one.
Yes, which many people I think probably did think when I talked about
Yeah.
it. They're like, "Why are you doing that? You know, that sounds crazy and not any fun." And in some ways they're correct. It was crazy and there were parts of it that were definitely not fun. But
Hmm.
on the other side of it, I learned so much about myself, about my body, about trusting not only myself, but also people that had gone before me and done it before, and listening to them and really hearing what they were telling me and letting that kind of not only dictate what then I did, but also calm my emotions and things that were going crazy on the inside
Hmm.
at some points, which I'll probably talk about in a little bit. But it was a really soul changing experience for me.
Oh, I'm so interested in hearing about it. And I also have to like ask forgiveness for making light of maybe people who have lost their lives and been left on Everest. That was not
We know you're well
okay.
intended. That's
Okay.
okay.
I was like, oh, that maybe came across really, but it's also, I just
Yeah.
kind of think it's fun. So, anyway,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So, oh, you mentioned that you first heard about it from Coach April Price, but what really drew you to actually do this? Because it's one thing to be like, oh, that's cool. And it's another thing to actually make the commitment and really do it.
Yeah. I mean, I've done endurance events over the course of my life. I've run a couple marathons, a couple half marathons. So doing something like this was not necessarily off the radar for me, but I hadn't really been working out as much as I thought. And I just thought that is a really cool goal. I think because I think when I was younger, I kind of did have this dream of maybe like, I want to climb Everest. I mean, that is the highest mountain in the world. Like, if you climb Everest, it's kind of like, I don't know if you know who Brian Regan is. Do you know who
Mm,
he is?
yeah.
And his whole thing about walking on the moon, like he wishes he was one of the guys that had walked on the moon because then at a dinner party, like when people are just talking about all the great things that they've done, he could say, "I've walked on the moon," and everyone would just be like, "Well, then you have the floor. Like nobody else has
Yeah.
done that, you know?" Um, so I kind of feel like that's like an earthly thing. Like if I met somebody at a dinner party who had hiked Everest, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, how did you do that? Right. But also just to see if I could do it. I think I wanted to say, I can do that. I'm 48 years old. Who says I can't? And to see what my body was capable of doing and my mind. So I don't know. I like pushing myself like that. Some things I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. But this one spoke to me for
Yeah.
some reason. So,
And let's be honest, like your body can be ready, but it is when it comes right down to it, I love how you said, and if my mind could do it, because that is
oh,
really what
yeah,
it comes down to in large part.
for sure. And my mind, my mind tried to talk me out of it many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. So,
So,
how did you mentally prepare yourself for that sort of test of endurance?
yeah, it was kind of again a whole year process, right? Like learning how to one get up and train at that level. Like there were days that we were training for 6, 8 hours, and that was continuous walking and being on your feet or doing the stairmaster. I live in Missouri, so there's not really a whole lot of mountains or elevation to get around here. And so I remember one day we were at the YMCA. We would walk for an hour on the treadmill on a steep incline for an hour, and then we'd get off and we'd get on the stairmaster for an hour, and then we'd go back to the treadmill, and we did that for 6 hours. Just dripping sweat. We had weighted vests on, just trying to give our bodies all the advantage that they could. And really, the best thing that we did was we actually went to the ski resort where we hiked 6 weeks previous. So I hiked in Stratton, Vermont, the end of October. And in the mid-September, we went to that resort and did it. And that weekend was probably the weekend that really determined my success at the event, because we went and we climbed, and the very first climb took us, so we were only climbing 1.3 miles, like not that far, but you would climb it and then you get in a gondola, ride it down, and then start again and climb again. But that
What's the
1.3,
elevation gain in that 1.3?
yeah, 1,700 feet.
Okay.
So it was significant. Like the first half mile took us about half an hour. And then that last half mile, 1.8, I guess, took us about an hour to do. And really from the mile, like 1 mile to point, like that last 0.3 was very difficult. Basically stair stepping, up the whole way. So, I we were climbing, and we got into the second half, and I have a picture of myself just basically having a panic attack on the side of the hill. Like my brain was screaming. Like it was like, you're 48. You don't need to do this. You don't need to prove this to anybody. Like there is no shame in quitting. You can hold your head high and walk away. Like we do not need to prove this to anybody. And it was right. I mean, it was right. Like I didn't have to do it. There is no shame if I didn't, if I didn't complete it. It's not like I'm a less of a person because of that. But luckily, I kind of got my brain under control, and my friend helped me get my brain under control. Like she was like, we're just going to hike this little part right now. And then tomorrow we'll hike a couple more times. And it was interesting to watch my brain kind of go through an evolution of complete panic to, okay, wait, we actually can do this. Like it's not that bad. And I kind of learned that my brain was learning what my body was capable of. So that first ascent up the mountain on that weekend, 6 weeks prior, it took us an hour and 45 minutes. And that was another reason I was freaking out, was because I was doing the math. I'm like, I have 36 hours to do this. 17 ascents is what I had to do. I'm like, I'm not going to make it in time. But the thing that was really interesting was that every time we kept going, we actually got faster, because my body and my mind started to learn the mountain. It started to learn how to do it and do it efficiently and do it well. So we did 3 ascents on that Friday that we were there, and then we did 4 ascents on the Saturday, and our 4th ascent on Saturday was our fastest. And we shaved off like 25 minutes, which was significant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we came home and we're like, okay, we have 6 weeks. We got to hit it really, really hard. And it was interesting because my friend didn't want to hear anything about other people doing it. That would totally stress her out. Where I was like, I want to hear everything that everybody has done. Like, I want to hear all of their experiences. And for me, like listening to all the coaching calls that the 29029 event organizers did, as well as listening to April's, I just learned that what I was doing, what I was experiencing was normal. Like nothing had gone wrong. And I just had to teach my brain that, like all of my emotions that were freaking out, like, oh, actually, this is totally normal. That almost by the time when we got to the event, I wasn't freaking out like at all. Like, I mean, I was nervous, but I wasn't like, I can't do this. I was like, yeah, I can do it. It's just going to take me pretty much the entire time. And I just have to be smart about how I budget my time. So,
Right.
yeah.
I'm exhausted listening to it. I mean, and I do a lot of hiking, and I've done a lot of endurance things myself, but it's
Yeah.
still anyway, makes me
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
During the most grueling parts of the climb, what would you say you learned about yourself and your ability to endure that sort of discomfort? And then kind of to tag along with that, how did the things that you learned shift your perspective in other areas of your life?
Yeah. The advantage was is that I had done some endurance events beforehand, so I kind of knew certain things that would happen, and it did. Like I had things that never bothered me before bother me on the day of the event. Like I had a groin that was just like a soreness in one of my groins, and I was like, I've never had this before. Like, what is going on? Like, and I was just like, oh well, that's just the thing, I guess, this time. And when I was training, what was really interesting is I had pretty bad plantar fasciitis, and it would flare and my feet were super sore. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be on my feet for 36 hours. That ended up being an absolute zero factor.
Hmm.
It didn't bother me at all. Now, by Ascent 7, I developed something I had never had before. I had exercise induced asthma. And that was pretty terrible because I felt like I was breathing through a straw. And so I literally was saying out loud to myself, like, I am safe, I can breathe, I'm okay. Like I would say that as I'm walking up the hill.
Mhm.
And that was kind of brought on by a variety of different issues. It was cold. I was exerting myself pretty heavily over a certain amount of time. And it was dusty. And so I was inhaling a lot of dirt. And so it was actually interesting because it was worse at the bottom. And I learned as I climbed that it got better. So that was another learning thing that I was just like, okay, it's bad here at the bottom. I would just tell my brain this, it's bad at the bottom, but we just got to get going and it's going to get better at the top. And it did. So, there was a lot of discomfort, but the discomfort was okay. Like I could handle it. Like there was nothing that was so out there. Now, we were very fortunate, I will say, that we had beautiful weather. The year before, at the same event location, they got 4.5 inches of rain during the event.
Which would have
So,
reduced the dust, but it brings a
yes, it
whole
would have.
other lot of
Yeah, it would have
elements.
been. Yes, it would have been like a whole other issues.
Yeah.
But again, it's just you have to kind of adapt in the moment, right? And you have to know yourself. And you also have to realize that there's people there helping you. Like I was climbing at night, the asthma was pretty bad. And I remember just praying. I was like, please, Heavenly Father, I need a coach because they have coaches that hike the mountain all the time and are
Mm.
helping people. But you can go for several hours and not hear and not see a coach. So, and it was in the middle of the night. So the coaching numbers go down because there's less participants. People will come off, they'll take a nap, come back. And I was like, I just need a coach. And luckily a coach came up right behind me, like almost instantaneously. Like it was a real answer to prayer. I think at that point I was feeling nauseous. And so I was like, because you have to eat like
Mhm.
every hour, you're eating 30 grams of carbs, which is very ironic because we're at the YMCA or outside, and you're doing this huge, heavy endurance thing. And people are usually at the gym to try and lose weight. And we're sitting there eating potato chips and like Mike and Ike's and Swedish fish as we're like, because we're trying to get all these carbs in to fuel our body.
Mhm.
So I was worried when I got nauseous that I wouldn't be able to get that energy in. But she was like, just take an hour, let your stomach calm down, and it'll get better. And it did. Like, and then I picked up and started eating again, and it was fine. So, yeah. But in terms of my life, like later, I mean, really, the number one thing that I have come away from this event understanding is that discomfort is the key to anything in life. Like, if you want pretty much anything and want to achieve anything, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And really, the only thing that lies on the other side of discomfort is possibility. Because now it has opened up a huge world for me of like things that I'm going to try doing because I never and I never would have done that had I not done this event. Like my friend and I are going to go hike the Cotswolds in England this fall, and then we're going to hike Kilimanjaro next January, and we're probably going to do 29 again, but a different venue. So just tons of possibilities of what I can do, as well as you look at life in general and you go, well, is it as hard as that? No. Then I can do this. I can
Mhm.
figure it out, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's what I love about pushing yourself to those extremes. So,
It's pretty fascinating. Even when something can be entirely different than something physical, just reminding yourself that you are so capable of doing something hard, regardless of what it is a really, I don't know, it's just a good motivator. It's a good fallback belief.
right. Yeah. And it's something that I think society is kind of losing a little bit
Mhm.
is learning how to just push through the discomfort. You see it in children, like they have a lot of anxiety and a lot of, emotions that they don't know what to do with. And I think the natural thing, and I understand this, is that we want to take that discomfort away when really a lot of times the best thing for them to overcome a lot of that anxiety is to face it and be supported through it. Like, know that, hey, actually, what you're feeling is totally normal. It's okay. I'm here to support you. We're going to get through this together. And then they build so much confidence on the other side of that because they're like, wow, I just did that. And that was super hard. But they prove to themselves and to their brain that they're what they're capable of.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. When my kids, we started backpacking with our kids when our oldest were like 5 and 7, and we took them, I think it was like an 8 mile in, and it was a good elevation climb. And 8 miles
yeah,
is pretty significant for little people. And we got back after our weekend adventure, and we were in the car heading down, and this what we had seen was beautiful, right? Like, you're in areas where most of the world will never be. And I remember saying to my kids, you've seen a part of the world that most people in this world will never see. And it's because you were willing to do something hard. You were willing to be uncomfortable. There were tears, there were everything, but you were willing to do it. And you got to see something that, most people don't. And I did make that into an analogy for them. There are so many things in
mhm,
this world you'll be able to accomplish and do, not that it's a competition with other people, but there are so many things you'll have access to if you're just willing to try hard and to do that. So I think there's
yeah,
nothing quite that teaches you that, like it's physically exerting, like what you've done.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
Okay,
So,
so there for sure had to be times when you're like, I'm done. Like, I want to quit. Were there, I guess, were there times when you really considered quitting, and what strategies or mindsets did you shift that helped you push through that? Because obviously you were able to push through it.
yeah, I mean, for sure, when we were there those 6 weeks prior, that was probably my biggest like time where I wanted to quit.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought, I just had to let my brain kind of process through it all and kind of get the freak out over with. And, even then I just thought, even if I only do 16 ascents, like that is still a huge accomplishment. I think the only downside to some of these events is that you get so caught up in it that you'll feel like a failure if you don't achieve it, where really just the fact that I trained, that I got up, that I committed myself to it was really the prize, right? In the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a point it was like midnight. So we started at 6 a.m. on Friday. We hiked all day. We got to 10 ascents by about 12:30 at night, and we were slowing down significantly. And so we thought, okay, this is the time to take a break. And again, this is where people ahead of us who had done this event before really were impactful. We had hired a coach, and she had said, okay, if you go back to your hotel room, you take a 5-minute shower, you get in bed and you set an alarm and you have somebody make sure that they're there to get you up. And so our husbands were there. I took a 5-minute shower, I set the timer, took a 5-minute shower, climbed into bed for an hour and a half, woke up, and then they drove us back to the mountain. And it was 3 in the morning, I think, when we got back on the hill. And I was suffering pretty badly at that point from the asthma and just trying to get enough air in. And but and my husband's like, you were just kind of in a zone. And that was true. Like, I wasn't really talking to anybody. I think he was more worried than I was, but I was just like, I just have to get going. I just have to get through this. And that was maybe the low point, but it got better. And that was also a really awesome lesson too, because what our brains think is that as we go over something that's so long and so taxing, we think that it's just progressively going to get worse. But the body is very resilient. And so growth is never linear. It's never like a straight line. So our first one, like our first ascent was fast. We did it in an hour and 10 minutes, which was the fastest that we'd ever done. And we didn't feel like we were really going that fast, which was good. We didn't want to, so we had fitness leveled ourselves up to that. And 2 and 3 ascent was pretty good too. And then we started to slow down a little bit. But then after that, ascent 13 ended up being my best. And so you would think, how would 13 be the best, after you've done 12 ascents? Why wouldn't ascent 8 be better than 13? And it's just because your body goes through cycles and rhythms. And so it just was going through a certain cycle and it did much better in that ascent. So, if I'd given up at ascent 11, I never would have known that, oh, actually a really good one is coming at ascent 13. So a lot of times we want to give up when it's really hard, but it's like, no, actually, if you keep going, you might be really surprised at what's coming. So,
Yeah. It's like it's really encouraging for me, and it's really inspiring, I think is the word that I would use. Even um just I think knowing that other people are doing hard things is always inspiring. And I think sometimes that shuts people down. Like, oh, I could never do that. I'm just not even going to try. And sometimes it does inspire people to try things. But I appreciate you being willing to share with us the struggles, because I think that is when you said that your friend didn't want to hear anybody's stories, but you wanted to hear everybody's, I was like, ooh,
mhm.
initially I probably thought, I think I'm like your friend. I don't know that I don't know that I would want to know it all. But then when you
Yeah,
were like, it helped me see that none of it was a surprise. Like anything that was happening was totally normal. That,
yeah,
I don't know. So it's so interesting to hear different experiences for different people and just
yeah.
being open to like taking a different perspective, I think is so helpful. Overall, from your 29029, how has it influenced your approach to just daily life, like day to day and work and relationships and, other personal goals? I know you shared with us what it's inspired, what doors it's opened up for you to do as far as other events like that. But what about just the day to day and relationships, the things that are just happening here and now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you walk away from, and I think most people would probably say this from 29029, is that it the thing that's so great about the event is there's no winner. So it doesn't matter when you accomplish the 17 ascents. You just have to accomplish them in 36 hours. So I think the first person who finished on Friday night, was done. But I don't even know who that is. It wasn't announced. It wasn't talked about. Nobody
Mhm.
really takes note of that. And I was the second to last person to finish. I do know that because of just how it played out. And it took me 35 and a half hours. But the reward was the same, right? We both, whoever that person was who finished on Friday night and myself who finished right at the end, we both got the red hat. So that is really what they're trying to accomplish there. And I think that that's a huge lesson. Like, it's not a race. Like, life is not a race. It's not about who gets there first. And that's kind of hard for my brain to unwind sometimes about other things. Like, I just want to get it done. I just want to get there. I just want it to be over. But really, they even said at the event, they're like, you kind of want to finish on the last day between this time and this time because that's when it's so exciting because that's when everybody's at the top. They're cheering you on, they see you coming, and they know how hard you've worked for that. And I think there's a great gospel analogy there in so many ways. Like, it's not a race to heaven, it's not a race to, you know, check all the boxes and get everything right. I mean, we want to be progressing in that direction, but if we get there when we're 30 or if we get there when we're 55, it doesn't really matter, because it's really more about the journey and just putting in the effort and doing it in the way that is good for you. So that's probably the biggest thing I took away from that was discomfort was what's possible because of discomfort. And then it's just not a race. It doesn't matter. You're only really competing against yourself. I mean, yes, there was a clock in this, right? And the sad thing was there was a girl who was climbing and I saw her on the gondola ride down at the end and I was like, she's not going to make it. And I think she was like 5 minutes from the top, when it was
Oh.
6 o'clock and she didn't get it. But she actually still did it. Like the only thing she didn't get was a red hat, right? Like that was it.
Yeah,
And
go buy your own.
so,
Just go
yeah,
buy your own.
yeah, that's what my husband said at one point. I'll buy you a red hat. If that's what
Uh-huh.
it takes, like I'll buy it for you. But yeah, so it just didn't really matter. You just kept going. And I knew I was going to make it. I actually knew the whole time I was going to make it because I had planned it out. I had gone through my freak out. And I think a lot of the people there were going through their freakouts, like on the mountain for the first time. And so that's why it's really important, I think, to set yourself up for success and like put yourself in difficult situations, try things out so that you can know that you can do it. So,
Well, I think we should just end on those words because those
yes.
are fantastic words to live by. But before we leave, Meg, can you please tell people how they can connect with you?
Yeah,
We
you
didn't
can.
talk a whole lot about coaching today, but all of these things apply in a
Oh,
coaching
for
manner or
sure.
another. That is what you do. You are a coach in
Yes.
your heart of hearts, but tell
Yes.
people how they can connect with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest Everest people climb are their
Yeah.
their emotional battles and being able to deal with those emotions and conquer them and learn how to lead them. So you can reach me on my website at megtiltoncoaching.com. I also have a podcast, Accessing the Power Within, and I have 3 episodes dedicated to my climb of 29029 that you can go listen to. And you can find me on Instagram at Meg Tilton Coaching. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Meg. Thanks for being with me and thank you for
yeah,
sharing your story. I love
yeah.
them. So
Thanks, Heather.
have a good one, everybody, and we will see you again next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.